Welcome to episode 6 of JurisQuestHub. I'm your host, Cynthia Liavule. If you're returning, welcome back. And if you're here for the first time, please consider subscribing to JurisQuestHub and most welcome. Your support will enable us reach more people and continue providing valuable content on jurisprudence and legal theory. Now let's get started on today's episode. Today's episode will provide an overview of the natural law theory through the eyes of two renowned Greek philosophers, Plato and Aristotle. Some useful insights and materials for reference in relation to the episode will be shared in the description box. So let's get started. We will start with Plato, then move on to Aristotle, after which we will compare their approaches and understanding of natural law theory. We will then conclude with the contributions of Aristotle's approach to modern-day law and practice. To start with Plato, you may be wondering why paintings often depict him with his finger pointing up, as in the painting at the center in the current slide. It's a painting found in the Vatican Museum referred to as the School of Athens by Raffaello Sanzio da Urbino. It represents all the greatest mathematicians, philosophers, and scientists from the classical antiquity period gathered together. They are sharing ideas and learning from each other. So it was Raphael's way of depicting Plato's philosophical approach, known as the theory of ideas of forms, whose assertion is that reality is grounded in immutable, non-physical forms existing in a realm beyond our tangible world. We start with Plato, who is one of the most renowned Greek philosophers and is considered a foundational figure in Western philosophy. His work spans various fields, including metaphysics, ethics, epistemology, and political theory. Plato's general approach to philosophy centers around the existence of absolute values or ideals, the concepts of beauty, justice, and goodness that are unchanging and universal. For Plato, the innate characteristics of an object, like beauty, are not solely defined by their physical attributes. Instead, they reflect a higher realm of ideal forms. So this notion informs his understanding of justice as well. For Plato, his belief was that justice transcends societal conventions and is an absolute truth that should underpin the law. Only those laws that align with the ideal of justice can be deemed genuinely right, encompassing a moral standard that exists beyond human opinion. A general overview of his philosophical approach includes the following key ideas. So 1, the theory of forms or ideas. That's why we saw his finger pointing up in the painting by Raffaello. Plato was of the view that beyond the physical world, there exists a higher realm of immutable and perfect forms or ideas. These forms represent the true essence of concepts we encounter in the material world. For example, beauty, justice, and equality exist as perfect forms, while the objects and instances we see them are mere imperfect representations. Then, moving on to knowledge, Plato believed that knowledge is not simply about empirical observation, but involves understanding the eternal and unchangeable truths represented by the forms. He famously contrasted the world of appearances, which is the sensory world, with the world of reality, which he referred to as a realm of forms, emphasizing that true knowledge comes from reason and intellect. Insofar as ethics and morality is concerned, Plato argued that moral truths are objective and can be discovered through reason. He believed that living a virtuous life leads to true happiness and that virtue is rooted in knowledge of the good. This underpins his concept of the philosopher king in the Republic, where he advocates that rulers should be wise and educated in forms, especially the form of the good. His approach, as we can see and tell, is quite abstract. Insofar as philosophy is concerned, Plato's political theory is articulated most beautifully in the Republic, On the right side of the screen, you can see a book referred to as The Republic, which is a good read that can be read slowly. And he emphasizes the importance of justice both in the individual and in the state, viewing an ideal state as one where each class, whether rulers, producers, warriors, perform their role harmoniously. So his general approach to philosophy contributed to key elements and concepts in natural law theory, which were later articulated by his good student, Aristotle, and later Aquinas, even though he didn't directly articulate them as natural law theory. So if we try to look at his notion of natural law, even though indirectly explained, we see that this is how he influenced natural law theory. So first, his emphasis on objective moral order. His emphasis on the existence of immutable forms suggests an objective moral order, and for him what is good is as real and unchanging as would be mathematical truths, implying that moral laws are not human constructs but part of the natural order of the universe. Secondly, his influence on natural law theory can be found on his philosophical approach on reason as a path to understanding the good. His belief that reason leads to knowledge of the good can be seen as an early precursor to natural law, where humans, through rational reflection, can discern moral principles that govern human behavior and society. Lastly, insofar as his thought relates to nature, he did not develop a natural law doctrine, but his views imply that living in accordance with moral truths or the form of the good, which he frequently referred to, aligns with a natural order that supports justice and virtue both in individuals and in society. So this notion informed his understanding of justice, and Plato believed that justice is something that transcends societal conventions and is an absolute truth that should underpin the law. And for him, only those laws that align with the ideal of justice can be deemed genuinely right. And from this, we see that his perspective captures what we tried to explain in the previous episode on natural law theory, emphasizing that a moral standard that exists beyond human reason should form the basis of just laws. And Plato's philosophy formed a good basis for many subsequent philosophical discussions about ethics and law, influencing later thinkers who developed the concept of natural law more fully, especially Aristotle. His belief in an objective moral order and the role of reason in understanding that order can be connected to the principles of natural law. So let's move to Aristotle. Aristotle similarly was a Greek philosopher and a good student of Plato, and his work has had a profound impact on Western thought, particularly in the areas of metaphysics, ethics, politics, and science. Aristotle's philosophy is grounded in observation and reason, and this can be summarized as empirical observation and logical reasoning. He emphasizes the importance of understanding the natural world and human experience, and what he sought to do was to understand values not in an abstract way or abstract ideals as Plato started or did, but within the context of human nature itself. So he observes that the natural world is a dynamic interplay of stability and change, and this is why he's famously known for the concept of telos, which basically refers to the fact that the ultimate purpose or end towards which things naturally tend to evolve. So let's have a general overview of his philosophical ideas. One is metaphysics, and meta in this context means beyond what is physical. So Aristotle's idea on metaphysics revolves around the concept of substance and the distinction between potency and actuality. He proposes that everything has a purpose, that is telos, and that understanding the nature of things requires examining their causes. So this entails examining the material cause of things, the formal cause of things, the efficient cause of things, and final cause of things. I know this sounds complex and would require more studies on metaphysics, but we'll see why it's important to understand insofar as natural law is concerned. Then another of his philosophical ideas is derived from his notions on ethics, and famously he's known for Nicomachean ethics. He introduces the idea of virtue ethics and argues that the highest good for humans, loosely translated as happiness, from the Greek word eudaimonia, is achieved through the practice of virtues. So for him, virtues are seen as habits that enable individuals to act in accordance with reason and achieve balance, which he referred to as the golden mean. In politics, his political philosophy emphasizes that humans are social animals and that the state exists to promote the good life. So for him, a government can be classified insofar as who rules and in whose interest those who rule do so. So that's why you have systems as monarchies, aristocracies, and tyrannies, oligarchies, and all that. So that's how he viewed politics. And like we said, we're trying to make a connection between the understanding of both Plato and Aristotle insofar as justice is concerned, and also nature. So for natural, insofar as the relationship between nature and justice is concerned in his philosophy, his approach to science, as we've said before, was empirical and observational, and he sought to understand the natural world through direct observation, and his works on biology and physics influenced subsequent scientific thought. So building on these foundations, Aristotle develops what we call the idea of political justice, which is intertwined with the notions of natural law, and argues that there exists a form of natural justice arising from human nature that is intertwined with the conventions of political community. And from this, then, we see how he influences natural law. He suggested that principles, they're universal principles, there's existence of universal principles, and that these principles are derived from nature and can provide a basis for ethical and legal standards. So he doesn't also explicitly formulate a natural law theory in a way that later thinkers, let's say Aquinas, would do, but he lays the groundwork by arguing for the existence of universal moral principles grounded in human nature. And then his influence can also be found in his emphasis on practical wisdom, and at the heart of this is his ethical considerations, because for him, practical wisdom then brings out the fact that there's importance of deliberation and judgment in discerning the right course of action according to natural law. So in summary, Aristotle's philosophy emphasizes the importance of understanding the natural world, human nature, and the role of virtue in achieving the good life, all which contribute to the conception of natural law as inherently aligned with the intrinsic purposes that are found in nature. So for him, natural law thus becomes a guiding principle for creating equitable laws, systems of justice, and also in the way that we classify justice, both distributive and corrective. And this must reflect the natural order and human nature ethical requirements. And maybe we could highlight some of the differences in the philosophical approaches between the two. And this can be summarized as being, first, Plato's approach is more abstract and idealistic, deriving moral truths from unchanging forms, while Aristotle's approach is more concrete and empirical, based on observation and the natural purpose of beings. Then 2, in terms of methodology, Plato relies on rationalism and dialectic for understanding, while Aristotle emphasizes practical wisdom and social context in ethical reasoning, guiding by what is objectively good for human nature. So between the two, I'd like to highlight especially how Aristotle's approach to natural theory has had a profound and lasting impact on modern law systems and legal philosophy, because his ideas about morality, ethics, and the nature of human beings continue to influence contemporary law sectors in several ways. So just to name a few, 1, it's formed a very good foundation for ethics in law, because Aristotle proposed that the law should be grounded in moral principles and that it should reflect the natural order of the world. And this has influenced modern legal systems to incorporate ethical considerations into legislation, judicial reasoning, and many legal frameworks today strive to align laws with societal values and concepts of justice, which can be traced back to Aristotelian thought. This is exemplified in legal education, in legal training and practice, and of course, things like ethical reasoning, professional responsibility reflect Aristotle's belief in the importance of virtue in public life, and which many legal practitioners are expected to uphold in their profession. Then, insofar as the concept of justice is concerned, his views on justice, especially the distinction between distributive and corrective justice, have informed modern understandings of equity and fairness in the legal system. And this can be seen in how legal systems approach issues of distributive justice, such as taxation, social welfare, and then in corrective justice, where basically we are rectifying wrongs, but then also providing remedies for harm. But then in the criminal justice system, for example, we have elements of rehabilitation and reintegration have been introduced so that the law is not simply a tool of punishment, but also an aid of helping people realize what is good and what is proper to their nature. Then, of course, we have natural rights. And although Aristotle didn't explicitly advocate for the concept of natural rights as understood today, his belief in the existence of natural order has contributed to the evolution of ideas surrounding individual rights and human dignity. And this is evident in contemporary human rights and their constitutional principles that emphasize the protection of individual liberties. And lastly, of course, he's been a shaper on jurisprudence and especially the natural law theory. This brings us to the end of today's episode and a trip from Greece, along with Plato and Aristotle. And like I mentioned before, references of texts used for this episode will be provided in the description box. And if you enjoyed this episode or have some questions, need clarifications, please feel free to comment, to subscribe, to like, to share, and hit the notification button so that you don't miss the next episode. And I look forward to your introductions. See you in the next episode. Thank you.